Welcome back, friends. We got another good one for you today. Can you see here? It's a tall deck chair. It's one that I've made the most of. It's the biggest seller for me, and I have 8 more that I have on order right now. So I'm just because I can, I'm going to make 10. And if I made 9 or 13, it doesn't matter. But I want to make a little bit more than what's expected of me at the moment. What this video is about is legs. I'm going to make legs. I want to show you my process for making the legs. And if you ever bought my plans or not, if you're making legs for furniture, that's what it's all about. This video isn't about selling plants. This video is about helping you make furniture. But if you have my plans, the length for the leg is 35 7/8 and it's by 2.5 inch wide. So I take a 2x6 because I'm making so many legs. I take a lot of 2x6s, 16 footers, and I run them along that way. I set up my stop block, which is over here, my usual stop block. I cut a bunch of 2x6s, cross cut them to 35 7/8. Then I bring them over here to the table saw and I rip them down to 2.5 inches. Here's one more point before I forget. When I'm ripping everything down, I use a 40-tooth blade. It's a little dirty. I need to clean it up. I need to take it off and clean it. But a 40-tooth blade, and it's not just a 40-tooth blade, but it's the Diablo, which I can get anywhere, and it leaves a pretty decent finish. It's for what we're doing. You might see a slight mark, but it's not littered with blade marks. It looks pretty good. A blade that's designed to rip is going to leave more marks, and a more expensive blade, I have an amazing blade on the chop saw. That's like a 120 tooth or something like that. That is from FS Tool from Amazon. The company's from Canada. It's an amazing blade. I have that on both of my chop saws. That's a $250 blade, but it's worth every penny. It leaves, let's see, go back to here. It leaves a polished edge. It's not an ugly edge. It's a clean cut. None of this has been sanded. These are clean cuts. It's all very nice. But the rip, if I put a nice blade like that on here, the kerf is almost twice what this kerf is, and that just adds to the mess. It adds to the power consumption, and I don't have a big fancy table saw. I have this DeWalt, which is great for me, but because I have this saw, because of what I'm doing, my 40-tooth blade is best. And with both of these, you don't have to come back. You don't have to follow up and sand anything. It's finished right there. So carry on. Hope it helps. I used to say, and I think I have it in some of my plans, is to just cut it down the middle and you end up with 2 3/4. I've grown to not be a fan of that. I've grown to prefer to have them at 2.5. And it gives you a little extra waste that you're getting, but sometimes there's a little extra bad material on the end and you want to cut some of that off, but you don't want to throw all the wood away. And I think 2 3/4 on the leg is fine. The width is fine, but 2.5, the width is also fine. It's negligible as far as the construction and the strength. So we cut all of these down to 2.5 by 35 7/8. The next step is to put a 15-degree bevel on the ends. And it's not just put a 15-degree bevel on the end. There's more to it than that. Because you have to think about, if I'm sitting in the chair and this is the leg, especially the front leg, this is the front face. So you have to think about, is this face better than this face? Is this outside better than this outside? You always have to think about that when you're making furniture. So the point is, if you have bad portions of wood, like here's a knot and here's a knot, a couple of things. From the factory and from the drying process, I'm not going to worry too much about it. A lot of that can sand out. But if I put this down to the outside, you're going to see this knot right there immediately. If I put this part down, you won't see any knot until you come up halfway, more than halfway. So, as I have a stack of legs, leg stock is what I have. When I grab it, I look at it and I determine what is the bottom front face. And after a quick glance, I know that's going to be the top. And so that edge, I think this is the face I want to have in the front. So I put it down. I put my shadow line right on this edge because I'm going to cut my 15-degree miter right on this edge, right off of that edge. I used to, for the longest time, I used to just take it and spin it and cut another one over here. But I've found that I end up with a little irregularity. So what I'm doing now, I keep it, and you have to keep everything, you have to maintain position or else you lose control of your position. So I take it from that first cut, I slide it down, and I have not just my stop block, not my rolling fence measuring, but I put a 2x6 here. I clamped it vigorously in the correct position, and I slide this to it. And whether the thing is, my fast cap stop doesn't come out this far. I could make one that comes out farther, but most of the time, for 99% of my cuts, that's fine the way it is. So I pick it, slide it to the block, and then make the other cut. So there's a leg, and this is the bottom, and this is the top. And I'll explain why we need to maintain. You don't want to start flip-flopping them. You want the bottoms all to be in the same direction. Cut it, stack it, get that out of the way, and I have the rest. So you get into a routine and you get moving quickly. That's not good. That's not good, but this is quickly the front face. You're looking for the front face at the bottom. So I have these cut. I have some others over there. I'm going to put them all together and show you the next step. So here's all my legs. And over there is the bottom. And why do I need to maintain a bottom and a top? Because if I already predicted that that's the better portion, and the anything with a defect is going to be toward the top, which kind of gets camouflaged by the armrest, or if it's inside the chair, there's a seat in the area, but the legs are exposed more than anything, so I want that to look better. Another thing, when I get the router going, here's my router, and here's my dry lube. You ever run the router on your wood but it's kind of sticking? There's the sap that gets in there, just even if it's not dust, but some of the sap as you run the plate across, it starts to build up enough to make it, give it a little friction, kind of like pine tar in a baseball. Well, the dry lube, I spray it on the plate, the base of the router, and it helps helps everything glide around better. But when I put the routed edge, I don't want to put a routed edge on the top because the top will be going up against the armrest, and I don't want a rounded over edge. I want that square edge. It gives it more glue surface. It looks better, but at the ground level, this is going to be at the ground. I put a routed edge on these three sides, and also this edge here. And because if you leave that a square sharp cut like that, it has a tendency to chip, and then that can peel away, and it adds trouble. I end up putting a rounded edge on it. And let me quickly show you how I do that. Let me go all the way. Then I take it, I roll it up to where that is up. Where you can see the router, the body of the router parallel with the leg, and the bearing perpendicular to this surface. And then I just roll it over like that. And it's a nice little rounded edge. A little effort, but you don't want to do this because of the placement. It doesn't line up well. You want the bearing to be 90 degrees with the surface that you're cutting. So that's how I do it. And it leaves a nice little rounded edge. So anyway, before that, and that's typically the very last step. Here's my lower portion. But before I route anything, I need to know, I already know all of that is the bottom, but we need to look at the A side and the B side. So I go through every one of these. And how many do I have? I have 32 legs. So we're going to have eventually 16 rights and 16 lefts. And as you sit in the chair, you have a left and a right on each side. So we're going to have 16 rights and 16 lefts. So I take a look real fast. This side is not as good as this side. So I put it down over here and I just go through them all. This one has some offset from the factory. Actually, I'm going to say this looks better. So here's my dividing line between the left and the right. You can see the miters are going in opposite directions. So I just start laying them down. This ugly side, we're going to put that to the inside. So it goes like that, and we carry on. This one, relatively clean. There's a little bit of scarring, but that's okay. It's not horrible. It's going to look better than this. So I put that down, and this goes here. Sometimes you get one where, let me find one. That's not good. Sometimes you get one where both sides are really good. What I like to do is put that to the side, and because you're eventually, when you take your known pieces that are good and bad, or A side and B side, they're not going to end up even. They're going to end up with one side is going to be more than the other. Whether 32 pieces, 16 each, we might have 20 of one and 14 of the other. But if we have some good ones, they could go in either side. And you just start going until you can't go anymore and see what you got. Sometimes you might end up with, this one is a good one that could go either way. Look here, it's not bad that way. It could use some sanding and cleaning up, but it's also not bad in that direction. Okay, I went through all of these, and here's my dividing line. So I have 3 stacks and 3 stacks. I have 3 pieces and 2 pieces. So I just need to put 1, and I have 3 that work out to be fine either way. So I can put them anywhere. Put these 2 here and put this one here. That's how I do it. And they're not perfect, but we've made a selection. That's all it's about. And with the material we have, and I always say this, we're not building pianos or Taj Mahals. So with the material we have, we're making the best possible selection for the placement on the chair. Now that we've made this selection, I'm going to go through with the router and route all the ends except for anything on the top. I almost forgot one last step before I go too far. Because this is the top, that's the bottom, the top all need a pocket hole screw at the top of each piece. And here's one on the end piece, but I need to go through, especially we know the face is up, the outside face is up on all of these, so this is the perfect time to do this before we start routing the round over edges. So I set up my pocket hole jig, which I love, and it's got the correct depth, it's got the correct collar on the bit, and I just kind of go to town. I take them one at a time, drill a hole, put it aside, drill a hole, put it aside, and then we do the other one, and then we can go with the router. And with the router, I use a 3/16 round over bit because I think it's a comfortable round over. It's similar to the factory edge. It's the most similar to the factory edge that I've found. So I'm comfortable with that. And I have a number of those bits just in case some go bad or get ugly or whatever. And that's pretty much it. Thanks for sticking with me to the end. I hope you liked the video. I hope it's helpful for you. And check out my other videos. I've got a lot of videos about outdoor furniture and different aspects of the furniture. And I like to share what I've learned, and hopefully it helps other people. And I also have plants available. So thanks again. We'll see you on the next one.